Bobby Norton, who was chairman of Peter Maritzburg Turf Club, used to come to the races at Richmond, and so did the staff industry, and he pushed for me to get my owner trainer's license, and eventually in 1978 I got my trainer's license.
The year I was born, Doug, 1978, look at that, eh?
Time flies.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Gives me great pleasure to introduce my guest to the In the Box Seat podcast today. And before I do that, Andrew Harrison, who's our co-host, is still not here. He's swanning it, fishing, sun tanning, and giving a hard time to the locals of the Seychelles. Doug, wouldn't it be nice to be in the Seychelles?
Lovely. Some chaps get all the luck.
So Andrew Harrison's back next week, Tuesday, so he'll be on the next podcast with us. He's gone for a well-deserved holiday, and we've been missing him. But he's back next week. But as you've heard, Doug Campbell is our guest today. Is it safe to say veteran trainer?
I suppose so, getting to that stage.
We welcome Doug to the podcast. Thank to him for travelling all the way from his farm at Sugarhill in, the name escapes me, Richmond, which is approximately 50 minutes away from Summerfeld. So we thank him for his time. The roads are treacherous. Did you find the roads okay? Because I drove up from Durban this morning, ghastly.
Not great, but I managed.
So Doug Campbell's our guest, and we're going to learn a little bit more about Doug, who's just recently celebrated his 1,000th winner as a trainer, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. But Doug, wonderful to have you here. Thank you for your time, and thanks for travelling down. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you. Lovely to meet you and chat, and it's great to chat about racing. It's always been my passion my whole life.
Doug, talk about being your passion for your whole life. What year did you start? What year did you take out your training?
We used to have a lot of amateur racing in the Richmond area, in the Berg, even in Tartar, we used to go down there. Cockstad, there were a lot of amateur racing. And when I was in my teens, I remember I was 13, I trained my first winner at the Richmond races.
Sure. At 13?
At 13. I didn't ride it, but Gene Newell, who was riding work for Ann Upton. Ann Upton helped me a lot in the early days. I used to have riding lessons with her. And the horse called Fair Start won there.
Then you've got a fair start, absolutely.
That's right, he's a lovely horse. And we had a lot of fun in the Richmond races. That's where we started. And then they introduced in the late 80s, late 60s and 70s, they started hurdle racing in South Africa and the Cape and in Natal. They even had them at Scottsville Racecourse.
Jeez, okay.
And I remember in 1970, I took a horse all the way down to PE. That's where I first met Ralph Rickson, had just moved down from Lusaka, and he was trying to get his license still, but he was training for the Cape Hunt, and he actually had Chris Snaith riding for him.
Jeez,
and I can distinctly, that's the first time I met them all, and Chris Snaith actually won the hurdle race on a horse called Adame, and our horse ran just behind them. But it was great days travelling down there, and when we came back, and then in the late mid-70s, I started trying to apply for a trainer's license, which wasn't easy. The first time I applied, they turned me down, and I had to wait 6 months. They were very strict.
Why is that? I mean, is it just too strict?
They were very strict. They said if I wanted to apply for an owner trainer's license, so you could just train 2 horses, and then you could run them in the amateur races as well.
Okay.
And they said if I wanted to do that, I could go and race in Bloemfontein, which is a bit
far from home.
And then I must admit, Bobby Norton, who was chairman of Peter Maritzburg Turf Club, used to come to the races at Richmond, and so did the staff industry, and he pushed for me to get my owner trainer's license, and eventually in 1978 I got my trainer's license.
The year I was born, Doug, 1978. Look at that, eh?
Time flies.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Yeah. So that's in 1978 you held your own trainer's license.
I had started with 2 horses.
2 horses.
Yeah.
Can you remember their names?
There was one called Frith and another one called Small Miracle.
Frith and Small Miracle, can you believe it?
And then eventually, after battling for about a year, Dennis Dry was very helpful. We got quite friendly, so I was battling, and he said Mrs. Armstrong had quite a nice filly called Peddler's Pie, which he'd get her to lease to me, and sure enough, leased, and after a few months, even running at the Richmond race, she came out and she won at Scottsville, which was a great thrill,
okay,
in 1979.
Okay, so that's basically, so as you say, born and bred into it, and it was just a passion and an interest and a love.
When I was younger, we all went to Pony Club and learned to ride there, and I used to do quite a bit of show jumping there, but my main passion was polo. We played a lot of polo.
And riding, Doug, I mean, you know, and I say it with respect, somebody hauled me over the coals the other day because I interviewed an elderly gentleman of the turf, And I rang him up afterwards and I said, I certainly hope I haven't offended you. He said, well, I'm not young. I am an elderly gentleman of the turf. Thank you for calling me such a wonderful, classy name. So you are an elderly gentleman of the turf. And I say that with greatest humility and respect. But in your early days, riding,
I started riding as a kid. When I was 5, 6 years old. I was brought up on a farm in Copa, then we eventually moved to Richmond. But we were always mad about it. We had wonderful, belonging to the pony club, we had wonderful English ladies out from England teaching us the care of a horse and how to bandage. Remember Mary Morland and Anne Upton helped me a lot. I used to spend hours at her stable. She used to have a riding school actually, and I used to have riding lessons with her before she took her trainer's license.
Anne Upton, sure.
So she was a wonderful helper to me as well.
Di, we're going to talk about your family in detail just now, but Di, at her lovely age today, she's still very active in the saddle.
I mean, she's 78, still rides, and we actually met at Pony Club. I was about 15 and 14. We didn't start going out then, but we had both the same love. We met, and then in our 20s we eventually got engaged and married, and she's a wonderful asset to the stable. She's a real horsewoman and is absolutely... The care to detail is absolutely amazing.
Doug, I know she rides, but does she put any of them through work?
When she was younger, she used to ride work, and she used to actually ride in the ladies' races and ride in the Richmond races, and won quite a few of those races there, so she knows a few. But her main passion was show jumping. She represented Natal show jumping in the late 60s and 70s, and the whole family were mad about show. My daughter Molly Gay show jumps, and they represent Natal. And my daughter Luella show jumped as well, and so they're all. And my son plays polo professionally in America, so they're all passionate about horses.
Sure. Unbelievable. And so you're talking about the family. Then you've got one son overseas, and then the two girls are here.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, well, lovely. At least you've still got some
family here.
Family here, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
And of course, Luella is married to Mike Robinson, who was a trainer.
Unfortunately, with COVID and the economy of the country, they had to stop training.
He's a top horseman too,
very
great
good
trainer.
Horseman. He worked for Chris Nath and Dennis Dreyer, and he's a good horseman, and wish I could afford him to come and join us.
And Doug, the grandkids, of course, now has the love of the horse filtered through to the grandkids?
Absolutely. I've got Luella's daughter is mad about show rides every day, and so is Molly Gay's daughter. They're absolutely passionate about show jumping. And my children in America both play a bit of polo. They're naturals, and they're
horse family through and through.
They're all at university. And time flies.
Doug, your beautiful, beautiful establishment, Sugarhill. How many years have you had it? I mean, did you start training there? Have you always been there?
We've always been there. Before in the 60s, we lived at Hilton. I had a little track there and trained near Anne Upton, used her track. But we moved to Richmond in 1970, and then straight away started putting tracks, and it's taken quite a few years. We've got 3 grass tracks and a sand track and an equine pool, which I think helps. It was guided by the late George Rolls. He had one and came out and showed me what to do, and it's been a big asset. And so I enjoy it's a nice, relaxed atmosphere for the horses, and we've had quite a lot of success over the years.
Okay, so you've never trained at Summerfelt or Clarewood or Ashburton, none of that. Obviously, Ashburton you've used as a facility.
And Scottsville, before Ashburton was built, every Tuesday morning they used to open up Scottsville Racecourse for us to gallop, and also you could put horses through the pens at Scottsville. And then they eventually opened up Ashburton, and we had the same facilities there.
I wonder, what will happen now with the closure of Ashburton? Would you have to come to Summerfelt?
I have to come to Summerfelt to pass horses through the pens. It's quite a way. But they are very good if I want to gallop horses on the poly before the first race. They do allow me to do that.
Okay, so it's accommodated. Okay.
Yes, no, sure.
So Sugarhill, now it would be remiss if we didn't spend a little bit more time on Sugarhill, because I've had the privilege of being at your exquisite establishment, and it just is. There's dogs everywhere, there's horses everywhere, the views are outstanding, the peace, the quiet. It really is horse heaven, isn't it?
It is, and I don't want to ever leave there. I've shown them where to spread my ashes. But we've had some wonderful, friends, who helped. We were starting off there, Anne Upton originally, but when I started getting a license on my own, Frederick Ivy had just retired, and I paid him a consultancy fee at the sales, and he used to go around. I learned a lot from him as far as picking horses. And then when Brian Cunningham used to be a very good trainer in Maritzburg, he got Parkinson's disease and he had to give up. He came and worked for me for quite a while. What a very good horseman. You never stop learning something from somebody. And he really was a big asset. And then a person who's now dead but helped me a lot is the late Dr. Brian Baker.
Okay.
He was helping me a lot, and I'd been a physical education teacher before changing to farming and horses, and I was very keen training athletes in interval training, and Dr. Baker knew quite a few trainers and vets in America, and in the early 80s he arranged for me to go across to America. And Di and I went and spent time looking at interval training and heart rate monitors, and we spent quite a bit of time there, and I really learned a lot of that. And he was such an asset on the medical side. He was very much into taking bloods, and he'd stop me quite often on the way back from the races in Durban or Clarewood and say, "Hey, I want to speak to you," and we'd go through the different bloods. He really was a wonderful help to me. I remember I had quite a good stag called Escapist, and he said, "Listen, this horse, I used to always sprint up horses 2 days before a race." He says, "This horse, you sprint him up on the morning of the race." And things like that you learn, and he was a wonderful help to me, and I can never thank Brian Baker enough.
So that is
a big asset to all of us. And then, of course, the jockeys, I've had great help from them, leading by Kevin Shea.
The lunatic, our good friend Kevin Shea. Never a dull moment with him. It was lovely to see him at the races the other day.
No, we've been friends for years. I mean, when he joined me, he just had a long suspension, and we cracked some good horses as he came. We had Dawson Trail and Mystery Guest who won the Fillies Guineas. And in fact, at the back of his pickup, he had Dawson Trail painted across the back.
That's right. I remember you said so. Yeah, but he was a phenomenal rider. Wasn't
he's
he?
a wonderful horseman, and placing horses, and but even starting off before that, I had some of the top jockeys who'd even come out and ride at the farm. Michael Roberts, Jeff Lloyd, and when they were going for the championship, Robbie Sham, MJ Oudendal. If you had a good enough horse, they'd travel. I never see anybody there now.
But Doug, talking about to Kevin, I mean, with a great sense of humour that he has. I'll never forget the one day I walked into the parade ring and his horse never ran a place. I said, "Kevin, what happened?" He said, "It couldn't go fast enough." He said, "I nearly went fast. I could have gone faster than it." He's got a great sense of humour.
He really was, but he really gave good feedback, and he was wonderful with owners, which is very important. The relationship with owners keeps them.
And as you say, you've had some really top jocks at the farm and go through and ride for you.
And we had Andy Delpeche riding some top, like Kingston Boy, who won the Natal Breeders' Stakes twice in a row, and Anton Marcus riding, or Basil Marcus used to come, and even Robbie Sham. I haven't seen him for years.
So those horses that you mentioned, just a couple of names, but you've been blessed to have trained some top quality. You've competed at the highest level.
We're very lucky. I mean, we had National Navigator won 8 races, Natal Fillies Sprint, and Kirk Levington won 8 races. In the earlier 80s, I was very good with early 2-year-olds, and it used to be called the Queen's Plate, not Queen's Plate, Queen's Nursery at Greyville. They don't have it anymore, unfortunately. Usually in April, it was a 1,000-metre sprint on the grass, and I remember one at about 3 in a row with Hero Worship and Kirk Levington, and a very good little sprinter called Barnaba Hartley.
Barnaba Hartley, I remember Barnaba
We bought him cheaply for 15,000 rand. He went on to win 7 races.
Can you believe it? So that's a lovely statement that you've made, because we always tell the people out there, the public, that yes, horses cost different prices, but there you've just heard Doug tell you about a horse he paid 15,000 rand for, some time ago, but in those days 15,000 could be today's 50,000.
That's right.
You can purchase a horse, they don't know their price. 15,000 rand, 7-time winner.
Even Dawson Trail, the Jungle Coves were going for big money the year, and I say big money, 100,000, 200.
Yes.
And on the last day we picked him up for 50,000, which is just luck. And they had Ivan Levy was a wonderful patron. They had him with me and a few others, Terry's.
How many did he win, Doug?
He won 8 races, but he was a very good horse. And then Mystery Guest only cost 25,000, and she won the Fillies Guineas.
So it can be done.
Yes, can be done. Yeah.
But before I talk to you about your owners, I want to talk to you about your grooms, because over the years, have you still got any gentlemen or gentle ladies that are with you from
Oh, yeah,
the beginning?
some of them the one groom looked after Dawson Trail in the 80s. He's Banduna. He's still with us. A lot of them been with me, 35 to 40 years, and they're wonderful horsemen. A lot of them come from the Eastern Cape and flew from Lesotho. I find they are actually better horsemen because they grow up with horses, but I've got a wonderful team of chaps, and they're very loyal. And I've got actually in the canteen there, I put a big TV in there, and I know I'm not the races dices. You can hear them shouting from there when we have a winner. They all like watching. We all stop work to watch the race.
Lovely, fantastic.
Yeah, so they're very enthusiastic.
Enthusiastic part of the team, which helps.
Yes, no,
and Doug, just lost my train of thought for a second. Yes, the grooms, you're very good also because you're fluent in Zulu as well, aren't you? So that helps a lot too.
It does help
really
a lot to understand each other.
Yes.
And each groom, who looks after his horse actually gets his bonus, and the work riders get extra as well. Even the driver who drives my lorry, he's been with me close to 40 years.
Sure. Okay.
And he's very meticulous about it, very high, and they all get right done. Even the maid in the house who gets the colours up gets a bonus. So they win.
Well, that's right. It's a happy operation.
Yeah, and try to look after everybody.
The drive to the races, that can be a little taxing.
It is, especially night racing, driving home. It's not pleasant. And thank goodness they haven't had much night racing lately.
And then, of course, we'll talk about bonuses, etc. Maybe a silly question, but let me not maybe ask the question, let me make the statement rather. The 2,000 Rand or the 1,000 Rand from Hollywood and Gold Circle, it really has...
Oh, it's been very well received, and it's wonderful. The chaps really get excited getting that, and they feel very proud being interviewed.
Absolutely.
There and
the photograph taken. I think it really has been a great initiative.
Nice to give them some exposure like that, which is very nice. Yes. No, sure.
Doug, owners, I don't expect you to go through them all because we'd be here till midnight, but you've, through the years, had some good men and women behind you,
well,
and still do to this day.
Well, my very first patron was Ray Mark Nader. He was best man at my wedding.
Okay.
And we used to go racing, in the amateur races together, and like in Kokstad and Berg and everything like that. And I remember he went to the sales in Joburg and he wants to buy me a horse. But he had only 500 Rand to expend, and we eventually found, he said, well, you're going to charge me for training fees, and in those days the training fees were about 300 Rand a month, and this is about 1976, 77, so I said, look, I thought to myself, well, I'll charge you 100 Rand a month, and after 3 months I'll put it up. So at any rate, he came and he bought me a filly for 500 Rand. I remember her name was Red Beauty, and we bought it. He said, listen, the next day I paid for the horse, but I hate to keep my trainer waiting, and he gave me 12 post-dated checks for 100 Rand a month. So he tied me up for a whole year, and he's still making me lots of money.
That's a wonderful story.
He's still got a share in the horse with me, and we've had some wonderful, Sir George Albin's been near me, he's been there, and the Campbell family, they're not relations of mine. Unfortunately, Monty Campbell died in February. He was 94.
Yes, and I think when I made that announcement at the races, Bruce told me that he was probably the oldest colour holder at the time. Probably, but but one of, let's rather to be safe. But what a gentleman!
A very gentleman. And the Slabbits, they actually came to me when they were still students, and they're younger than me, and they've retired now. They own Mystery Guest and a lot of other horses, and they've retired in England now. But their other partner, Greg Pickett's still in South Africa, and people like that are still very loyal, and they communicate. And I've got Chris, the Charms immigrant to Mauritius. He's got a share in Bedtime Story. We communicate a lot, and even some of my patrons who retired into Australia, keep in touch. And Eddie de Klerk, ex-jockey from Rhodesia, who worked with me for a while. He's living in New Zealand now. We continue, he follows all our racing, and if we have a winner, we send it to him. And his wife Carol was my secretary, and he is a very good horseman. He was a top jockey.
I remember Eddie de Klerk. Wrote winners for you.
He did write a lot of winners, and very good horseman, wonderful. Helped on the farm and repairing things. Very good handyman too. And so wonderful having people like that. And in the early days, Tom Ratley, who had worked for Ralph Frickson, he fell off Jamaican music. He came and worked with me for a while too. As a very good horseman, and had all those chaps helping there.
Doug, we can, every stable needs owners, every stable needs horses, but. So there's always room to grow, there's growth, but the current owners that you've got now, a lovely bunch of people.
Yes, and unfortunately, a lot of them are retiring, like, Dave Hawkins. Once they hit into their 70s, Dave Hawkins has been a long time, and there are lots like that. And we've got chaps like Rob Hazel who joined us now. Lovely to have them there, and Bruce Campbell's still there. But
Yes.
we are battling because I just haven't been to the yearling sales the last years because none of them have had any funds. Once
Sure.
the chap gets through 70s, they're having to worry about how they're going to live on their pension.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and it's sadly is a reality.
I'm very grateful to the younger owners who are supporting me, and it's really nice. I've got a few from Richards Bay, chap Priggy Vandaya, and you've seen Abraham who are still supporting me. It's nice to have them. And my oldest patron at the moment is Ian Gibson, who's in his 90s. Okay. He used to actually race with us in the amateur races in Richmond, so it's lovely having him in the stable.
And of course, all your owners and friends are most welcome to come to the farm.
Well, when we first started training, every Friday, it was full up for breakfast. It was 8-10 people for breakfast. Things have changed. I wish we could have those days again.
Yes. Talking about those days, you had often every year you have an open day.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, because we're also going to talk about this program here.
We used to have fantastic. We started getting into entertain our owners. More recently, we'd have them during the day, but early on the roads are better. People start from Durban. We used to put a big marquee up, have live music, and we'd have betting. Terry Pete, the bookmaker from Maritzburg, used to come out, and they'd have betting with the owners and owners' wives, and the one race, like all these different jockeys we had here, even like, and then the wives like Kim Chapman was before Kevin married her. Kevin, please come home early on.
Well, I'm going to ask Tawanda to take a picture of this program.
Those different owners.
I'll just have a look there. And have a see that was the race program of the open days and the fun days at Sugarhill. And let me open it so you can also have a look and maybe zoom in at some of those names that are on this that are on this program. And as Doug says, that have a bookmaker come up, that have frog races, that have great fun. And if you just have a look at that, you'll see some of the big names that were there. And of course, Jeff Lloyd, Kevin Shea, the late Peter Dillon, Basil Marcus, Billy Harvey, Robbie Sham. And there's some funny names. Doug, Linda McNabb on Richmond North. As you say, Kim Chapman on Kevin Come Home. George Albu on Peace Palace. Adam Kethro on Fandango Flyer. Okay, sure. So
they all had horses here in those days.
Fantastic. And those open days, I know that through COVID, etc., everyone sort of had to button up, but is there a chance that there'll be an open day in the near future again?
I'm hoping perhaps by next year. Things are very tight at the moment. We've got very few horses to show. The numbers have dwindled, unfortunately. And if they do, and if any owners want to, or breeders want us to contribute to something like that, but we had some before COVID. Unfortunately, the last couple of years we haven't been able to do it.
Talking about everybody being strapped for funds, etc., and everyone having to think out the box and make their buck go a little further, you've thought out the box, because now you also have the most beautiful facility that you actually offer a pre-training facility too.
Right. I think it's ideal in retirement. I had a lady come yesterday who wants to retire her show jumper, and so we've got nice paddocks. So we're trying to build up that. It's also less stressful than the racing, and I can understand, Warren, a lot of the younger owners coming in want to go to a younger trainer where they can go and party together. I can't party like I used to. And so that's understandable. So we're really trying to build that, and I really appreciate I know Suzette Viljoen sent quite a lot through Lisanne Forbes. Paul Gadsby sent me one now, and it makes such a difference to have those pre-training, and I make it an absolute etiquette rule that any horse that comes in, I will never try and attach to care on training. It's got to go back to the trainer and system. It'd be absolutely unethical for me to try and keep it.
And of course, knowing you're the man of the family of class and breeding and high standards. I mean, as you say, it's important to mention that it would be completely unethical. So it's a spelling farm. If horses came to you, it was to be pre-trained. There's a big difference between the pre-training side of it and the training side of it.
And if horses have got an injury, we rest them. We've also got the equine pool where they can rehab. into that and get them back to fitness. And I'm really trying to build up that side, although at the moment we've got a lot of empty stables, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it is. It's
a sign of the times.
Absolutely, but let's certainly hope that this little interview would let people be aware, you know,
Yes,
and people be aware that certainly from a pre-training aspect, you're open for business. Well, that's exciting. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Doug, what are the difficulties, or what? There's just two questions before we wrap up, because we could sit and talk for hours, but we're all pressed for time. In the beginning, were there any huge difficulties or challenges training off a farm? But I suppose you really started from a farm, so that's all you know, really.
Absolutely. You know, naturally they're getting farriers out there, but now we've got our own regular farriers. And I was very lucky. I had a very good amateur rider, and a chap called Tommy Hammond, who was the champion in all the amateur races, and we strung up a good friendship. They came from Zambia, and very good horseman. He was a good show jumper as well, and he used to ride a lot of work for me. And you know, it was lovely having them. It's always nice. What I do lack at the moment is having the odd jockey coming up.
Okay.
But everything's based in Summerfeld now. It's so much easier for them to.
Yes, sure.
Why get in the car and drive to Richmond?
Yeah, 100%.
But
I understand.
if you find you've got a good enough horse, perhaps they might.
They might sneak up the hill. Absolutely.
Yes,
Okay.
Sure, yeah.
Recently, I was so happy to do the interview with you, and I was so happy to be present. Another person who was, he was sitting on the balcony, shouting off the balcony, thrilled with joy, was Bill Lambert. He's also a wonderful human being, and he's been a supporter of yours also for a long time.
Yes, I remember quite a long years ago when Michael House had their centenary year. Robin Scott donated a horse to Michael House for their funds.
Okay.
And they selected me as a Michael House old boy to train it for nothing.
Oh, wonderful.
And to run in Bill Lambert's colours, because they were red and white hoops like the first rugby team.
Right.
So we trained that, and actually had a box. We won first time out.
Sure, goodness gracious, that was.
We won a few races, and we were hoping to encourage more Michael House old boys. And actually took to Joburg, just got beaten the big feature race at the Executive Fashion Stakes. But we had a lot of, and Bill and I have still been very good friends.
He's a wonderful man for racing.
I remember him when I was still at school, him working for Lambert's and bringing clothes out to the borders and things like that.
We went for dinner to the Roma Revolving. We had some guests here from Joburg, and just the other night we went, and his son was there, Pumpy, and a lovely racing family.
Wonderful racing.
Doug, sorry, getting back to what I was saying, I had the privilege of being at the races and interviewing you. 1,000 winners. Wow, that's really a milestone.
Thank you. No, we had sleepless nights getting up to there.
You remember you said it was a little bit of a dry spell, but
well, I know we had to wait 2 months, but we had quite a few seconds. And I was in America too, visiting. We had quite a few seconds, and perhaps it was nice to wait till I'm there to actually.
Yes, absolutely, to enjoy the moment.
It was wonderful having Di there. She hadn't been racing for quite a few months, and so it was lovely she was there. And I can't thank Tommy Crow enough. I mean, he's a very big owner in the game. I trained a lot of horses for his uncle, Doug Crow, and I know his father, Jasper Crow, well, and Jasper Crow went to school with my father, so there's a real old family connection. But he's a wonderful sportsman. I played polo with him, and his brother Rupert is actually was my son's best man at my son's wedding. They played polo in America a lot together, so they're quite a lot of family connections.
So 1,000th winner. Well done to you and your whole team, because it really is not many around that have trained 1,000 winners.
Thank you very much.
And it's just been fantastic. Yeah, Doug. Well,
thank you so much.
All I can really do. I mean, we've covered all bases, and we try and get as many personalities on the podcast as possible, and especially that you've had your 1,000th winner. I thought it would be the right time to talk to you. But really, just from us, from the In the Box Seat podcast team, and from the entire racing fraternity, thank you to you and Di and your whole family for loving horse racing and loving the animal, and just keep going so well. It's really been a pleasure chatting with you.
You chaps keep on promoting racing, which is so important. We really appreciate that.
Lovely, Doug. Fantastic. Well, that's Doug Campbell then. It's been wonderful chatting with him and learning a little bit about, well, not a little bit about, but learning all about his life story and what he does. And you heard it from him. Beautiful farm up Richmond Way. The doors are always open. Doug's welcoming of anybody to go and visit. you've got a horse to pre-train, he can do that for you. If you've got a horse to train, he can do that for you too. He's done it 1,000 times. He knows how to train a winner.
And we've got a bar there as well.
Oh, that's
have a drink there.
Absolutely. The only problem though, Doug, you've got the bar upstairs, and if you have one too many beers, you've got to negotiate. But the bar
We'll help him down.
Doug will help you down the stairs. If not, there's a big couch there that you can sleep on the couch. But really, it is a wonderful establishment. And look it up, Sugarhill Stud, Sugarhill Farm. And it's just been fantastic. Lovely to talk to Doug, a gentleman of the game, 1,000 winners, pre-training and training up at Sugarhill. Look it up, and we wish them really all the very best. From the entire team that gets the production going, thanks very much. Andrew Harrison's back next week, and plenty of racing action. It's the World Sports Betting 1900 at Hollywood Bets Greyville on Saturday. Top quality racing action. Of course, check on all your social media platforms on Tab Gold, and of course Gold Circle's Tab social media. Soccer bets being won for small outlays, big dividends. Is lots of winning to be done and lots of winning to be had. From Warren Lenferna, Doug Campbell, Tawanda, the whole team behind the scenes, we wish you all the very best, and we'll see you as always in the number one box. Thank you for watching this week's episode of In the Box Seat podcast right until the very end. And we hope that you enjoyed it, because we certainly did. If you missed last week's podcast, In the Box Seat podcast with Andrew and myself, please go and watch it here. And last week's episode will be right there for you to go and enjoy and watch, as we know you will certainly enjoy In the Box Seat podcast from last week.